for today's trip, going taking you guys with us to Manchester and Salford. Like I said, is to cover some of the story of Jimmy Savile, because as many people, especially in the UK, obviously realise, Jimmy Savile was quite a big thing prior to his death in 2011. I think it was 2011 when he passed away. But he became an even bigger story, sensation, after his death, when all the horrific facts came out about his lifestyle and how he was a serial predator. Some say there could have been between 400 to 500 victims of Jimmy Savile. Like I said, being a serial sex offender, he committed heinous crimes on many people. And we're talking, like I said, up to 500. And a lot of these people, the majority were young children. But from what we were reading just recently, you also had family and friends who he targeted of these children. You had healthcare workers. You had people, like I said, working in a lot of the hospitals, which were named in a report that came out after his death and during the investigation. So he was a monster, and as the film title shows, he was vile. It was Jimmy Savile in my eyes. I think his surname kind of sums the man up. He was a beast. Just there. So this is, and I think it's Broughton or Higher Broughton. It's the Salford side of Manchester, and this is the first location on our list today, and it is one of the former premises where Jimmy Savile lived back in the mid-60s. And it was a place which apparently it was mentioned in the investigation into the abuse that he caused. And it's just an alright now, so we're going to park up and then we'll have a walk past and talk some more about what occurred here back, like I said, in the 1960s.
You don't leave anything on show.
I'll just come in. You've got to just look. Yeah. So the first location is here, and it's known as Ascot Court, I should say. And this is where Savile himself used to live, and it was in one of the top, is it penthouses or one of the flats at the top? Now this is at the time when Savile himself was becoming more and more popular, the go-to man of Manchester, and basically he had a lot of money. And from the mid-60s, he used to live at the top of one of these. Now there was a lot of furor at one point. I think 7 years lived here, until obviously he was making a lot of money, and a lot of people kind of looked at it in a bad way, because obviously these are council flats, and you had a wealthy local guy. Well, when I say local guy, obviously he lived in Manchester for what, a good 10 years, but he kind of rubbed people the wrong way with his wealth, so he had to leave the council flats. But it was somewhere, we think, around here, where Savile used to keep his, I think it was his Rolls Royce, wasn't it, Vic?
Yeah, it was. It was a car.
Yeah, it was a Rolls Royce he kept down here. But yeah, but these are the flats where Savile himself used to live, like I said, for about 7 or 8 years. And it was just at the top of one of these. Ascot Court. Now, we're not going to stay too long at these locations because it does have a bit of a bad vibe about it. I'm not saying it does have issues here, but there is kind of a bit of a weird vibe, isn't there?
We don't know the area.
Yeah, we don't know the area right well, but behind us is, like I said, is Ascot Court, where Savile, like I said, I keep saying it, but that's where he lived. But we thought you'd bring you guys here first because, like I said, he spent many years at the top of this flat in one of the rooms. Now, he also used to live at 301 Great Close Street, which is just further in that direction. And he lived there for, I think, for about 4 or 5 years. But from all accounts, that premises used to be on a corner of Duncan Street. But it was somewhat of a ramshackled building. It looked like a haunted house from all accounts. And he used to have a friend who used to be his fixer, I think was the word used in the investigations. But he was like an assistant DJ, he was a friend, he was his chauffeur, Jimmy Savile's chauffeur. But he said in the investigation that his original house at 301 Great Close Street, it was run down, it was dilapidated, is that the word? It was derelict, it was fire damaged, and Savile lived in one of 2 rooms.
Did he not make the other rooms black as well?
Yeah, he painted the rooms black to match the burning of the actual premises. Really weird, really odd behaviour, even back then in his early days. But he used to sit outside on the steps, apparently, where he would talk to people passing by. But the house on Great Close Street itself, it actually had to be torn down, and I think it was part of some kind of refurbishments of the whole area. But the house on Great Close Street, no longer there. There's new houses there, new builds. But yeah, but the house apparently was run down. There was only 2 rooms that were occupied on the lower ground. It was fire damaged. Even Savile himself said he didn't need much. I don't think he had he didn't have, what was it, a TV, and there was something else, wasn't there?
And there
it might have been a fridge, but there were 2.
No, it was a cooker.
A cooker, sorry. No.
Every single house.
Yes, there was no cooker and there was no TV, no kettle. Now, we've watched plenty of documentaries. We've watched hours of footage on Savile, and it's strange that in many places he's lived at, he doesn't have a cooker because he felt like he never needed one because he never entertained people. He never entertained the idea of entertaining people.
Yeah, he said he didn't want to.
He didn't want to. It used to give him headaches, just the thought of it. Yeah. Now, if you watch the Louis Theroux documentary, When I Met Savile, you'll hear him say this in that documentary because Louis Theroux asks him why he was never married. And from all accounts, Savile himself, he also never had any children. He never had any full-time girlfriends. We know why he didn't have relationships now, don't we? But that is Ascot Court, where Savile spent about 7 or 8 years at the top of his, well, when I said the top of his fame, this was the top of his fame as a local DJ here in Manchester. And like I said, we're going to go to the Plaza, or where the Plaza used to be on Oxford Street. We're not going to go to Great Close Street, like I said, because obviously we don't want to be disrespectful and stand outside somebody's house with a GoPro. But in the 50s and 60s, it was slowly becoming well known, especially in these parts. We also know that he was quite popular over in Leeds, his home city, where he was born and bred. He did a lot of DJing in them areas. But we believe from the actual investigation, the reports, that it was Manchester and Salford where indeed the alleged offences began back then.
When he started getting popular and abusing.
And when I say alleged, obviously we know now he was a serial predator, so probably the word alleged isn't the right word, because like I say, he was guilty.
When I say abuse it, I mean at the time not abusing people, I mean abusing his fame.
His fame, yeah. Because Savile, when he was living at 301 Great Close Street, he used that popularity and he used his upcoming fame, you know, the fact that he was well known, he was the go-to man. He used it for his own advantage, and we know what that advantage was now. It's to gain access to young girls and young women. When he was the assistant DJ or assistant manager at the Plaza, he came up with the idea of arranging, was it like a dance groups for lunchtime, so for office workers to come round. and I think they paid something like £1 at the time to enter the premises. But you soon had schoolgirls bunking off school just to go and see Savile and listen to the latest American music, you know, the tracks that he was playing. So, like I said, the investigation goes back to certainly the mid-50s, if not early 60s, when these types of abuse started to become the norm for Savile. And like I said, he was using that popularity and that fame for his own evil ways. So the building on our left is where the former Plaza used to be, here in Manchester, in the heart of Manchester. And it's here where Jimmy Savile used to be either the assistant or the manager, DJ. And it's here where we believe, from reading the evidence and the investigation and the reports, this is indeed where many, not alleged assaults took place, but where he may have, one could use the word groomed, where he chatted up the young girls before sexually abusing them back at his premises on Ascot Road and at 301 Great Clough Street. So where this grand hotel is now, is it an hotel, is it, I don't know what it is. It's like a Premier Inn, is it an office? I'm not really sure what this building is, guys, but this is where the Plaza used to be. And we have photographs from over in that side looking at it. But this is where Savile himself, back in his early days, at the start of his career, this is where he would spend many evenings DJing. But we also believe it was here, from the police reports and investigation, that it was here where he did indeed begin his reign of terror, one could argue. Now, as you can see, it's completely changed, it's all modernised. But this, my friends, is the exact location where the Manchester Plaza once stood.
Are you going to put a picture up of him young in his heyday?
Yeah, and what we'll do, we'll put some photographs over of Savile, like I said, when he was very young. I think he was in his early 30s when he was here. You can see in one photograph he's actually smoking his cigar. But again, I mean, these crimes, if you will, went on for what? They're at 4 decades? 30, 40 years maybe?
That's a quick question. No, because I love you. Don't mind if you're saying I still love you to bits, life's too short now. There's 25 people homeless, guys.
We don't carry any change whatsoever, pal. Not one single. Not
since COVID, don't carry cash.
Phone number?
Sorry?
Phone number.
Bye.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. As you can gather, we're in Manchester and we are going to get 1 or 2 homeless people asking us for money. But this, yeah, as I was saying, was the Manchester Plaza. Now here in Manchester, like I said, a lot has changed over the years since Savile once roamed these streets. But me and Vicky were just talking off camera, and we still can't get our heads around how it would take until his death before obviously all these, I won't say allegations, but I mean they were allegations, but obviously they were proven to be correct. But when all these instances of abuse, it took 40 years before they all came out, and it was only after his death. And it's just incredible that it went on for so long. Now, like me and Vicky were talking, you could say that people were coming forward, they were going to the police, weren't they? And it seems like there may have been a bit of a cover-up, and the police were kind of turning a blind eye, and it's because of the power that Savile himself could wield.
But going back to it, on our live chat the other night, 2 people I think said they'd met Johnny Lydon.
Yeah.
And Johnny Lydon straight away.
Johnny Lydon called him out back in the 70s,
right,
didn't he, when he was with the Sex Pistols?
Yeah.
And he basically said that there was a lot of rumours circulating about Savile and about what he was up to. And even Johnny Lydon himself said if he could kill somebody, he'd be in the top 5.
Yeah. And somebody said, well, you could get done for libel, and they said it's not libel.
It's not libel, it's not libel speaking the truth.
Yeah.
But it's no coincidence that Johnny Lydon himself from Sex Pistols was kind of banned from any future TV work, wasn't he? I mean, I know he was outspoken and outrageous anyway with the Sex Pistols, but
that again,
this kind of
influence he had.
There was people at the BBC especially who knew what Savile was up to, who were turning blind eyes because either they were afraid of their own careers, 2, they didn't really know how to approach it, who'd believe him at the end of the day? Savile was a popular man. And 3, Savile himself knew people even higher. So like I said, they could have been afraid for their own well-being, couldn't they? But Johnny Lydon himself called Savile out, and like I said, one could argue his career, possibly on the TV, suffered.
One of the things which really interested me there was your view about Jimmy Savile and your knowledge at the time that it was going on.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think all of us, what we call the peoples, knew what was going on with the BBC.
As bad as we now know it was?
Yeah, we knew. We all knew. We knew that you go to Top of the Pops, what you were facing. It was common knowledge, but it wasn't common knowledge in the media.
Now, like I said, guys, this video was just a walk around Manchester to show you guys where Savile once roamed and where he lived and where he worked. This is by no means an in-depth story on Jimmy Savile and what he got up to, but this is kind of the origin of evil, if you will. This is where it kind of began. This is where the investigation kind of started with the police, when all these allegations arose after his death. So like I said, we're not going to get into too much depth about what he did and the victims.
We might do a little sum up of how we both feel about it at the end.
Yeah, we'll do an ending for the video, and like I say, guys, we'll talk about our own personal thoughts on it. But we're now going to leave the centre of Manchester itself, and we're going to head towards Rusholme and to a famous location where Top of the Pops originated.
Yes, it's number 1. It's Top of the Pops.
So the story of Jimmy Savile here in Manchester, it doesn't end here. If anything, it kind of begins here, doesn't it? In and around Salford, Manchester. We're in Rusholme at the moment, and we're going to go to a place which kind of really kick-started his career, and obviously it kick-started the whole abuse part of his life. And it's where a farm, I think it was a Wesleyan church, a disused church was, and it's which the BBC took over when they first started filming Top of the Pops. Now, Top of the Pops, it's a gem of a TV show, and it was a gem of a TV show. It became a popular mainstay in the British public, didn't it, for many years, 20 odd years, I think.
You wanted to know what the number 1 was that week, didn't you?
Yeah, we always used to tune in to see what the number 1 record was. But Jimmy Savile was the very first presenter of Top of the Pops, and it was here where he kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? He kind of honed his skills when it came to manipulating the media. We're going to walk down, show you where the church and obviously the studios were. Like I said, there is a plaque on the wall. I'm not going to spend too long here. But like I said, the story doesn't end here. Now, a lot of people will be saying, why have you took us on this trip? Why are you digging up the past with Jimmy Savile? Unfortunately, history is history. We can never erase what happened.
And Days of Horror, we always want to keep it alive, even if it's horrible.
Like Vicky said, on this channel, we will go back and we will talk about crimes from our past. We don't do it to be insensitive or glorify what happened. We have been contacted by many of our viewers asking, will we ever touch the subject of Jimmy Savile? And we've kind of always erred on the edge of caution, haven't we? I've always wanted to go to Scarborough, where he used to live with his mother and where he is now buried.
Which was originally the plan
and
this
that
year.
was the original plan for this year, like Vicky said. But we've got so many projects on, well, pretty much all haven't we? We're in Manchester filming something different. We were going over to Blackley Cemetery to do a video on the criminals who were hung at Strangeways and whose bodies were dug up and cremated and buried. The ashes were buried at Blackley. So we thought we'd come to these locations here in Salford and Manchester to touch upon the story of Jimmy Savile.
Do a different take on it.
We're doing a different take on it because a lot of people have covered the story of Savile and his historic crimes. They visited the hospitals where all these crimes took place. They spoke in depth about the depravity of the man. But nobody ever really comes to these locations, the Ascot Court flats, 301 Great Clough Street. Even here, where the studios of Top of the Pops were filmed.
The Plaza.
The Plaza, where we've been to. So this video, like I say, guys, isn't the longest, but it is one which I just thought some people might find interesting. We know the topic, the subject matter is very disturbing. We know it's still raw, and especially for the people in the UK, it's extremely raw because it kind of filled us all, didn't it? And I've said that earlier on in the video, I think, but it filled the nation. Anyway, let's go and do it.
Okay.
Vicky's foot is in a boot, so this walk's been a bit stressful for us, to be honest, today. But just down here is where the old Wesleyan church were, which was turned into the studios for Top of the Pops back in the 1960s. And if I've got the year wrong, I'll put it down below, but I'm sure it was 1964 when that first episode was aired. And like I said, Jimmy Savile himself was the presenter for that episode. Now the church has long since been demolished. I know this has been redeveloped, but there is a plaque on the gable end of one of the houses. So what do you think to this area of Rusholme?
Actually, yeah, you can look at the graffiti all over the buildings. However, I don't feel
It's very, very quiet, isn't it?
Yeah. This is actually one of the better parts.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So guys, coming up now is the actual plaque of where the old Wesleyan church used to be. And it's here towards the end of Dickinson Road in Rusholme. Now if you look just up here, there is the plaque. Site of the Rusholme Wesleyan Church, built in 1862, it became the home of the Mancunian Films and later the Northern Studios of BBC Television between 1954 and 1975. So just here is where the church were, the studios. Now for those who may not know, Mancunian Films also, they had some kind of connection with the Hammer films. And for those who will have watched the Highgate Cemetery film, we actually covered the story of Taste of Blood of Dracula, which was filmed in Highgate, or parts of Highgate Cemetery. But this place here, this church, was also connected with the Hammer movies and many others. But yeah, this is where Top of the Pops, the very first episode, and many others after it were filmed. So you've had a lot of famous people here as well. The Beatles, I think the Trogs might have been here. You would have had all the 60s and 70s bands coming here, the big ones at the time. But this is where Jimmy Savile himself would have honed his skills, his personality skills, where he would convince the public that what he was doing was right. He was a friendly guy. And yes, it's the first time I'm going to mention it, but he did raise a lot of money, didn't he, for charities, over £40 million.
But let's be honest, now we know the reason he was doing all that.
Yeah, there was a cover behind it. I'm not saying in his own head he thought he was doing right for people, but that £40 million did go towards helping a lot of people, didn't it?
Yeah,
but
it was a chief fundraiser,
it was also a
wasn't
cover.
it?
Yeah, it was a massive
fundraiser. One of the
fundraiser.
hospitals, and that's why the people at the hospital didn't say anything.
Yeah, and this is a question we have to ask. Why was Jimmy Savile never ever investigated fully back in the time? And I can only think it was because it was so powerful, and I believe he probably had so much dirt on so many people, the police, the politicians at the time.
He even got in with royalty.
He got in with royalty. So
Margaret Thatcher
he was a very influential person, wasn't he?
Yeah, Margaret Thatcher loved him.
Yeah. And obviously a lot of the victims who did come forward before he died, their stories were kind of diminished because the authorities didn't know how to take it, did they? Yeah. And we also do have an article with Val McDermid, the famous author of Wire in the Blood, and she was a journalist here in Manchester in the 70s, I think for 10 years, and she herself said that she used to hear tales, stories, whispers, rumours of what Jimmy Savile were up to. And she herself remembered speaking to Jimmy for an article, an interview, and she said he came across as a horrible individual. There was something nasty about him. Now, obviously we've never spoken to Jimmy Savile, and I'm glad we haven't. I'm glad he is in a hole now. But from what we've seen on these documentaries and on TV, he comes across very snidey, sharp-witted, questions, one answers to questions, and then he'll say next.
That was
and he does it a lot. It's like he wants people to really push him as much as they can, because he's always that cocky and that confident that he'll be able to get out of any sticky situation. And when you watch a lot of his documentaries and a lot of interviews with him, he'll say next, 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 and it's like he's being pushed. It's like he's pushing people to see how far he can go without giving anything away. It really is a bizarre character, really strange character, wasn't it?
The one that stuck out for me, and it was a long time when we watched it, was the one when he was molesting that girl at church.
I think that was the TV show with Steve Coogan, The Reckoning.
But that was harrowing.
And because he was doing it in churches as well.
And that girl, she obviously was a Christian, and she had no escape from him every time.
Yeah. So this shows you just how warped this individual
was. Don't
was.
get me wrong, I think it's warped anyway, and the fact that he was doing it to disabled people, who again, these disabled people are people who was also couldn't speak and paralysed.
It's frightening. It's a frightening story. But we thought we'd bring you guys to this location because this could really be the epicentre of where it all started with Jimmy Savile. I think it would have started earlier and went unrecorded, but surely Top of the Pops, and when the fame started to grow, one could argue this was the very beginnings of the evilness of Jimmy Savile.
I still think it'll be the Plaza when he started to get confident.
But it was the TV, wasn't it, side of it all, and how fame came.
Getting in with the police.
We do have footage, don't we? And you mentioned it coming down. We do have footage of Jimmy Savile, and you can see he's clearly touching a woman in an inappropriate way whilst on Top of the Pops. And we'll put that footage over as we're talking. But you'll see a jump forward more than once, 2-3 times. And this is on TV, this is on Prime Live TV. And he was still doing it. This just shows how brazen the man was.
And when you do look back at, not actually interviews, actually just proper filmings of him, like on This Is Your Life and that, all the innuendos were there.
Yeah.
Nobody picked up on it.
Yeah.
Well, the general public didn't.
So like I said, this is a video showing the 3 or 4 locations of Jimmy Savile in Salford and Manchester. Like I said, we're not talking too much about all these crimes and the depravity of it all. That's for you guys to actually go and research yourself. Go down that rabbit hole if you so wish. There's plenty of hours, thousands of hours of footage on YouTube, Netflix, Amazon Prime and other streaming services. But this is just our quick walk around Rusholme, Broughton, Manchester itself, because these locations are very rarely shown, aren't they, in documentaries.
Oh, that was another one you wanted to mention. You mentioned about that song.
Yes. Now, many people also know the song Panic by the Smiths, and I'm not going to get too deep into it, but there is talk of that song was actually written by Morrissey and Johnny Marr in relation to Jimmy Savile, because the lyrics, hang the DJ, there's panic on the streets of London, Birmingham, Carlisle, Leeds. There's always about running down alleys and things like that. Now we know Jimmy Savile was a keen runner, he was always doing marathons, he came from Leeds, he travelled all the length and breadth of the United Kingdom doing what he did. He was also a DJ.
Down the disco, hang the blessed DJ. On the Leeds side streets it is slipped down, on the provincial towns you jog round. Hang the DJ.
Some people say it was written in relation to an article and a story to do with Steve Wright, the former DJ who sadly passed away. But we looked into it. Personally, we feel it could well have something to do with Jimmy Savile, and a lot of people in media knew what Savile was up to back in the day, but nobody ever came forward and spoke about it.
I don't think the Smiths said anything because
no.
Richard Light, was it Richard?
Yeah, John Lydon out of the Sex Pistols, he was the only one that actually went on record as calling out Jimmy Savile, and we know what happened to John Lydon, the Sex Pistols. But we think that the actual song Panic may well have been a direct dig at Jimmy Savile and the establishment, because it's also weird how the chorus Hang the DJ is being sung in the background by children. Now again, this is maybe a rabbit hole people may want to go down, I don't know, but it's an intriguing theory anyway, isn't it, even if it's not true.
Why don't you put on the screen a picture of the lyrics?
Yeah, we'll put the lyrics on.
Read them for a minute.
Now, like I said, I don't think Morris himself ever come out and acknowledged the song as a
but he probably didn't then because of the backlash that John Lydon got, and he probably doesn't now because he just doesn't want to promote it anymore.
I don't know, but it's one of those rabbit hole theories, conspiracy if you
But
want.
if you're asking my opinion, it clearly is Savile. Every single lyric there relates to Savile.
So that is it from our short video on visiting the locations of where Jimmy Savile used to live and work. But anyway guys, like I said, if you enjoyed this video and this type of content, don't forget to give us a big thumbs up, don't forget to comment in below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. In the meantime, like I said, we're going to shoot off to a different location, but we want to take care, look after yourselves, and as always guys, stay safe, stay curious. We will be back soon with all the tales from my dark but at times glorious past. So take care everybody.